Battlefield 1, Single Player. Battlefield 1 you will meet a series of war stories, stories about specific people, each with their own skills and career. There is a war, but those stories in Battlefield 1 is personal stories. They are about people, not battles. The Great War varied. And we wanted to reflect her diversity. In the First World War had many names and stories, and we aim to tell as much as possible. Therefore, we have revised the format of the single-player game in Battlefield 1. We understand that eating one character will jump between the fronts and armies, we lose the sense of credibility of what is happening. Therefore, we chose the format of the anthology. Different characters and everyone has their own story. So we managed to preserve credibility and diversity, two birds with one stone. For example, the head of Through the Mud and the Blood. It happens in the end of the war, is the story of the crew of a tank the British Mark V. The main character is a young soldier, a tank driver. However, he has no experience with these new fighting machines. He has to learn, and quickly. Our hero has to fight for the trust of friends. The game has social dynamics, so that the story becomes personal. Danny Edwards, our driver, not a sniper. Not a flying ace. Not an expert. He's the former chauffeur, who has recently gone to war as a volunteer. He knows how to drive cars and fix them. And so it begins. In the early Battlefield games, the story was told on behalf of one hero. The camera rarely went sideways. But in Battlefield 1 we decided that it is not enough just to tell the player the hero is you. Wanted strong characters. You can insert videos, they would tell about the character more than the game in first person. We wanted the player to see and feel what the characters are, not just understand it with his head. We won not only in the coherence of the narrative, but also in emotional impact. Creating a single game, we analyzed how the players think, act and play online. Usually in games you have a goal, equipment, and plan. During the execution of the plan often falls apart and you have to improvise depending on the enemies and technology faced. We strive to maintain the consistency and freedom to the game that make the gameplay so dynamic. Battlefield. For example, in the aforementioned episode of Through the Mud and the Blood there is a part which we called the fog of war. You suddenly find yourself in the woods, prolonged fog. Visibility is low and you have to walk in front of the tank, clearing the enemy camp. It is possible to undermine the anti-gun, you can sneak up and make a melee. Then you come to a rather large database with field guns. It can be destroyed to protect tanks or to use against the enemies. You can still destroy the crew of an enemy tank and capture the car. These capabilities are introduced, so players could choose their own style of play as in multiplayer mode. Even the single-player game will introduce you to historical figures of the era. Many of us have heard the romantic and ambiguous character like Lawrence of Arabia. As the Red Baron, Lawrence became one of the legends of the First World. I hope players like to fight with him shoulder to shoulder. Confronted with the technical superiority of the enemy, Lawrence in Battlefield is one in this trap. The Ottoman Empire may have a huge train of canavar, beast in Turkish, with a gun with a range of several miles. Empire fighting horsemen, armed only with rifles. Battlefield 1 your character is the right hand of Lawrence. You will have to use all skills to find the enemy camp, capture equipment, and to challenge the armored giant. Play openly or secretly, at a distance and in melee, on horseback or in armored vehicles. Only you can decide. So, in single-player mode, Battlefield 1 has a lot of war stories. We hope that you will appreciate them after you run Battlefield 1 on October 21st. Battlefield 1